Welcome to Deep of Kindness, where real stories touch real hearts. Here you'll find emotional, motivational, and true life stories that inspire hope, compassion, and humanity. Every story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's world. Subscribe and be part of a community that believes in love, empathy, and the power of doing good. Because kindness isn't just a word, it's a way of living. The city of Lahore was wrapped in a shroud of winter mist that evening. Neon signs flickered lazily, their glow reflecting on wet pavements as the drizzle continued to fall. Expensive cars swept past the narrow roadside stalls, leaving ripples in muddy puddles and the scent of rain mixed with exhaust fumes. Amid this noise and motion, one silver car pulled over near a modest little cafe, a place most wealthy people never even noticed. Inside that car sat Mr. Ryan Malik, 32 years old, founder and CEO of Malik Enterprises. To the world, he was a genius investor, a billionaire known for his calm precision and unmatched discipline. Yet behind his perfectly tailored suit and composed eyes was a man who hadn't felt anything genuine in years. His success had built him a mansion of silence, large, cold, and echoing with loneliness. That night, he wasn't supposed to be there. His meeting had ended early and his driver had suggested stopping for tea while traffic cleared. For reasons he couldn't explain, Ryan had agreed. He rarely said yes to random detours. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe fate was gently pulling him towards something he needed to see. The cafe door creaked as he entered. It was warm inside, smelling of brewed tea, fried bread, and the faint smoke of a nearby heater. Simple wooden tables filled the small space, and the chatter of tired workers created a hum of life that his corporate boardrooms never had. Ryan took a seat by the window, removed his gloves, and signaled the waiter for coffee. He leaned back, letting his eyes wander. That's when he saw her. At the farthest table, almost hidden from view, sat a woman and two small children, a boy around 7 and a girl who looked no older than 5. Their clothes were clean but worn out, sleeves slightly frayed, shoes dull from use. The woman's shawl was thin for such cold weather, yet she kept wrapping it around her children, ensuring their small hands stayed warm. The waiter brought a single plate of rice, plain, with a spoonful of lentils on top. Ryan noticed how she smiled softly, cutting the small portion into 3. She pushed the largest share toward the children and quietly began to eat the tiniest part, pretending she wasn't hungry. Her son frowned and whispered, "Mama, aren't you eating?" "I already ate earlier," she lied, her tone light and cheerful. Ryan saw through it. He saw how she looked at the food, swallowed her hunger, and smiled again as if joy alone could fill an empty stomach. Something about that image pierced through the layers of wealth and detachment that had built up around him. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded, replaced by the quiet rhythm of a mother's sacrifice. He watched the children giggle over the tiny bites they shared. They didn't complain. They didn't notice that the world outside their table was vast and unfair. Their happiness was built from the crumbs of love their mother offered. Ryan sipped his coffee, but it suddenly tasted bitter. The steam rising from the cup blurred his view for a second, but when it cleared, his eyes stayed fixed on that table. He noticed every small detail, the threadbare cuffs on the boy's jacket, the missing button on the girl's sleeve, the faint tiredness behind the mother's graceful posture. He asked the waiter softly, "Do you know that family?" The waiter shrugged. "They come sometimes, sir. The lady works nearby, maybe a cleaner or tailor. Always polite, always short on money. Orders the cheapest meal and shares it with the kids." Something shifted in Ryan's chest. He looked down at his wristwatch, a limited edition Swiss model worth more than that family probably made in a year, and suddenly it felt absurdly heavy. What good was all his luxury if he couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled the way those children just had? He remembered his own childhood, his mother's laughter before life had turned hard, before business and ambition had replaced affection. She too had once shared her meal with him when times were tough. The memory hit him like a wave, unexpected and sharp. Outside, the drizzle turned into steady rain. The cafe door rattled as the wind blew, but Sarah, the mother, kept humming softly to her daughter, fixing her hair with gentle hands. Her calmness was almost sacred. Even in struggle, she carried herself with quiet dignity, as if she refused to let hardship define her. Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. It wasn't attraction. It was something deeper, something painfully human. He realized how much he'd forgotten about real life. The dinners he attended were filled with laughter that didn't reach the heart. His phone was full of numbers but empty of names that truly mattered. Watching this small family share one meal, he felt both ashamed and inspired. Sarah's son accidentally spilled a little rice on the table. She quickly wiped it up, whispering, "No waste, my love. Every grain matters." Her words were simple, but to Ryan they echoed with truth. Every grain mattered, every act of care, every bit of love given even when there was nothing left to give. He saw her glance toward the counter, perhaps calculating if she could afford tea. Then she smiled again, choosing not to order it. The children leaned into her arms, their small bodies safe in the warmth of her shawl. It was a picture of struggle and grace intertwined, a silent story of survival told in the language of love. Minutes passed, but Ryan didn't move. His coffee had gone cold. His driver peeked inside once, confused about why his boss was still sitting there, unmoving. But Ryan wasn't ready to leave. Something powerful was building inside him, a strange mixture of sadness and hope, guilt and admiration. When the children finally finished eating, Sarah collected the empty plate and carefully placed a few coins on the table. She counted them twice, ensuring the amount was exact. Then she whispered something to her children, probably a small prayer of gratitude, and began to put on their little scarves. Ryan felt an urge to do something, anything. But he stopped himself. He didn't want to insult her pride. There was strength in the way she held her head high. She wasn't begging, she was surviving. And survival, he realized, was a kind of nobility he had never known. As she walked past his table toward the door, her eyes met his for a fleeting second. In that look, Ryan saw exhaustion, courage, and a quiet beauty born from love. She gave a polite nod, perhaps out of habit, and left with her children into the cold night. Ryan sat frozen, his reflection on the window merging with the blurred shapes of rain and neon light. For the first time in years, he felt something stir deep inside his heart, a forgotten warmth, the ache of empathy. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know her story, but he knew one thing: this moment had changed him. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the streets clean. Inside, a billionaire sat alone, realizing that sometimes the richest souls are those who have nothing but love to give. And as the sound of children's laughter faded into the night, Mr. Ryan Malik whispered to himself, maybe tonight wasn't an accident after all. Ryan sat in silence long after the little family had returned to their table. The faint sound of spoons clinking against metal plates filled the air, mingled with the low hum of a radio playing an old Urdu song. He could see the children still, nibbling at their shared meal, laughing about something silly, completely unaware that their laughter was slowly cracking open the walls around his heart. He wasn't used to this feeling. In his world, emotions were distractions. Numbers, meetings, and deals left no room for them. Yet, here he was, in a small cafe on a rainy night, feeling more alive than he had in years. The boy offered the last spoonful of rice to his mother. "Mama, you eat too," he said softly. Sarah hesitated, her eyes lowering. She smiled, trying to make it look playful. No, it's yours, my love. You need it more. You're growing." The little girl tugged on her sleeve. "Mama, please." Sarah laughed gently, though her eyes glistened. She leaned down and kissed both their foreheads, pretending not to be hungry. That small, quiet act of sacrifice, done without complaint, without pity, struck something deep inside Ryan. He felt a lump rise in his throat. It was a simple thing, yet it carried the weight of love, pain, and dignity all at once. He couldn't sit still anymore. He rose from his seat, adjusting his coat, and walked toward them. Each step felt strangely heavy, as though his heart was leading the way. not his mind. Sarah looked up, startled. Her children froze mid-bite. Ryan stopped a few feet away, his expression gentle, a small reassuring smile on his face. "I think your meal looks too small for such big hearts," he said softly. Sarah blinked, unsure how to respond. She looked down quickly, embarrassed. "We're fine, sir. Thank you." But her son's innocent voice interrupted. "Uncle, are you rich?" Ryan chuckled lightly, crouching down to meet the boy's curious eyes. "Maybe. But I think your mother is richer. She has both of you." The little girl giggled, and even Sarah couldn't help but smile. There was sincerity in his tone, warmth in his words that melted away some of her hesitation. He straightened up and turned toward the waiter. "Bring everything on the menu. The best dishes you have." The waiter's eyes widened. "Everything, sir?" "Yes," Ryan replied calmly. "And make it quick, please." Sarah stood immediately. No, please. That's not necessary. We're okay, really." Her voice trembled slightly, not out of pride, but out of a deep humility that refused to take advantage of anyone's generosity. Ryan met her gaze. "I understand," he said gently. "But sometimes, we all just need someone to remind us that kindness still exists. Tonight, allow me that chance." The sincerity in his voice made her stop protesting. She nodded slowly, whispering a quiet, "Thank you." The children watched in wonder as the waiter began bringing out steaming plates: chicken curry, naan, kebabs, rice, and tea. The aroma filled the cafe, and the boy's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked at his sister, then at his mother, then back at the mountain of food on their table. "Mama, is this all for us?" he whispered. Sarah nodded, smiling softly, though tears glimmered at the edges of her lashes. "Yes, my loves. Just say thank you to the nice uncle." "Thank you, uncle," they chorused together, their voices full of pure joy. Ryan smiled and took a seat at the next table, quietly watching them eat. He didn't want to intrude further. He just wanted to see that happiness, real, innocent happiness that money couldn't buy. Sarah served her children first, making sure they were full before she took even a single bite. This time, though, the kids insisted. "Mama, now you eat too. There's so much food," the little girl said, pushing a plate toward her. Sarah hesitated again, then laughed, a real laugh this time, and finally took a bite. The sound of her children's laughter filled the cafe, echoing against the walls like a melody of hope. Ryan felt his throat tighten again. For a moment, he imagined his own late mother sitting across from him like that, feeding him with the same love. He remembered how she used to tell him, "Never forget the hunger of others, my son. When you rise high, make sure your heart doesn't fall low." He realized he had forgotten that lesson somewhere along the way. But tonight, this woman and her children had reminded him what wealth truly meant. After a while, the waiter approached Ryan. "Sir, the bill?" Ryan shook his head. "No, don't tell them anything. Just say it's taken care of." The waiter nodded, smiling. "Of course, sir." As Sarah and her kids finished, she walked over to Ryan, her expression still hesitant. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for us tonight." Ryan stood and smiled warmly. "You don't need to thank me. You've already done more than you know." She looked puzzled. "How so?" He met her eyes, his voice low and sincere. "You reminded me what kindness looks like when it's real. You reminded me what love looks like when it's pure. That's worth more than anything I could give." Sarah's eyes softened, her lips parting slightly as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. She just nodded, her expression full of emotion she couldn't describe. The children tugged at her hands, eager to go. Before leaving, the boy looked back and waved. "Goodbye, Uncle. We'll never forget you." Rayyan waved back, smiling. "And I won't forget you either." When they left, the cafe suddenly felt empty. The laughter that had filled the air moments ago had vanished, but it lingered somewhere deep in Rayyan's heart. He sat back down, staring at the table they had just occupied. The empty plates, the crumbs, the half-drunk cups of tea. All small, ordinary things that somehow carried extraordinary meaning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, running his fingers over the embossed letters. Malik Enterprises. For years, that name had symbolized power, status, and control, but now it felt hollow. What good was power if it couldn't make a difference in lives like Sarah's? He made a quiet promise to himself right there, to find her again, to help her in a way that didn't just feed her for a night, but gave her a future. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street glistened under the orange glow of streetlights. As Rayyan stepped out, he looked up at the sky. It felt clearer somehow, lighter. Maybe the storm had passed, not just outside, but within him. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Rayyan Malik smiled, not as a billionaire, not as a businessman, but as a human being who had remembered what kindness truly meant. The next morning arrived quietly, with sunlight slipping through the cracks of thin curtains and landing on the worn-out floor of a tiny apartment. The sound of distant traffic mixed with the clatter of utensils as Sarah prepared breakfast, just tea and a few slices of dry bread. Her children were still asleep, their faces peaceful, unaware of how much their mother worried every morning about rent, groceries, and the next day's survival. She stood by the stove, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, lost in thought. The night before felt almost unreal, like a dream she didn't deserve. The kindness of that stranger, Mr. Rayyan Malik, had lingered in her heart. She replayed his words over and over. Sometimes we all just need someone to remind us that kindness still exists. Sarah smiled faintly. Maybe, for once, someone had reminded her too. As she poured tea into a small cup, her old phone buzzed on the counter. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" A warm, calm voice replied. "Good morning, Miss Sarah. This is Rayyan Malik." For a second, she thought she misheard. "Mr. Malik?" "Yes," he said, his tone gentle but certain. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to talk to you about something important." Her heart began to race. She clutched the phone tighter. "Oh, no, not at all, sir. I just didn't expect—" He chuckled softly. "I understand. I went to your cafe earlier this morning, but you weren't there yet. So I asked around." Sarah's mind flooded with worry. Did something go wrong? Did I offend him somehow last night? But his next words erased every fear. "I met your landlord," Rayyan said. "He mentioned you were a few months behind on rent. I've settled that for you completely." For a moment, the world went silent. The only sound was the faint hiss of the boiling kettle. "Sir," she stammered, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted gently. "You've carried enough weight alone. It's time someone helped you carry it." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She turned away so her children wouldn't see her cry, though they were still asleep. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You already did," he replied. "You thanked me last night, with your strength, your patience, and your smile. But I'm not finished yet." Sarah wiped her eyes, confused but hopeful. "What do you mean?" "I have a small foundation under my company," he explained. "We help women like you, mothers who've had to fight too hard for too long. We run educational programs, skill workshops, and community support centers. I'd like you to join us, not as someone who needs help, but as someone who gives it." She gasped softly. "Me? Yes, you. I saw something in you yesterday that I don't often see. Dignity even in hardship. You're exactly the kind of person who can inspire others. The position pays a steady salary, and there's room to grow. You'd be helping other single mothers find stability, just like you once needed." Sarah pressed her hand against her mouth, unable to speak. The tears came freely now, hot and unstoppable. Her voice broke when she finally managed. "Sir, I don't have the words. You don't need words, Sarah, Rayan said. Just say yes. She let out a shaky laugh between sobs. Yes, sir. 1,000 times yes. Rayan smiled on the other end of the line. Good. My assistant will call you in an hour with details. Take your children out today. Let them smile. Let yourself smile too. You've earned it. When the call ended, Sarah just stood there, phone in hand, staring at nothing for several seconds. Then she covered her face and cried. Not the quiet, hopeless kind of crying she'd done before, but tears of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. Her children stirred awake to the sound of her sobbing. Mama, her son asked sleepily, rubbing his eyes. Why are you crying? Sarah turned to them, kneeling down beside their small bed. Her cheeks were wet, but her smile was the brightest they had ever seen. These, she whispered, cupping their faces, these are happy tears. Her daughter tilted her head. Did something good happen? Sarah laughed, nodding. Something wonderful. She pulled them both into her arms, hugging them tightly. A kind man. Remember the uncle from last night? He helped us. He gave Mama a job. The boy's eyes widened. Really? So we can buy more food? Yes, she said, kissing his forehead. And we can move into a better house soon. No more worrying about rent. No more sharing one meal. The children squealed with joy, wrapping their arms around her. Their laughter filled the small room, pushing away every shadow that had lived there for months. That day, for the first time in a long while, Sarah allowed herself to dream again. She dressed neatly, tied her hair with care, and took her children to the park. They bought samosas from a street vendor, played on rusty swings, and fed crumbs to the pigeons. She didn't have much money left, but it didn't matter. Hope had returned, and it felt richer than gold. Across town, Rayan sat in his office, looking out over the skyline. His assistant entered with a folder. Sir, I confirmed the payment to the landlord and arranged Sarah's onboarding at the foundation. Would you like to meet her personally when she comes in? Rayan smiled thoughtfully. Not yet. Let her settle first. I don't want her to feel indebted. I just want her to feel safe. He leaned back in his chair, thinking about how strange life could be. One night, one small cafe, one act of kindness, and everything changed. He realized that in helping her, he had helped himself too. Over the following weeks, Sarah began her new job. She greeted every visitor at the foundation with warmth, understanding their pain because she had lived it. She organized food drives, comforted anxious mothers, and taught them to sew, cook, and manage small savings. Each time she saw a smile bloom on another woman's face, she silently thanked Rayan for giving her this chance. Months later, at the foundation's annual charity dinner, Rayan finally saw her again. She was standing on stage, speaking to the crowd with quiet confidence. Her children were sitting in the front row, dressed neatly, their eyes glowing with pride. She ended her speech with trembling hands and tears in her eyes. Sometimes, a single act of kindness can turn a stranger into a blessing. That's what happened to me. I was lost, and someone chose to see me. Not my poverty, but my worth. And that changed everything. The audience stood in applause. Rayan watched silently from his table, a proud, humble smile on his face. That night, as Sarah tucked her children into bed, she whispered, "We'll never forget what he did for us." And as she turned off the light, she realized something deeper. Kindness doesn't just change lives for a day. It plants a seed that keeps growing, touching hearts long after. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't have to share one meal. She shared hope instead. And Mr. Rayan Malik, the billionaire who had everything, discovered that true wealth had never been in his bank. It had been waiting in his heart all along.